Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today, we'll be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you, Ben, from Books with Bengus Colin, for tagging me in this. This is a tag that I've seen done over the last few years, and I always love watching these videos, so I'm very happy to be doing my own version of this tag. But before we get into the tag, we have to go over the answer from the last Comedy with Colin segment, where I asked you guys the joke, why do you wear glasses when doing math? The answer? Because it helps with division. Okay, without anything further, guys, let's get into this tag. So we've got 13 prompts. I have them pulled up on my computer here so I can just reference them real quick before I go into the answers for each one. And the first prompt is going to be best book you read so far in 2023. The answer for best book I've read in 2023 and favorite book I've read in 2023 are two different ones. So the best book that I read in 2023 is going to be A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. Now, this book was truly a masterpiece of fantasy literature. I've seen the show, but reading through all the events that happened in A Storm of Swords, because in the show, I didn't know where exactly in each book the events in the show were taking place. But when I was reading through this, just thinking about the plot where it was and the amount of things that had to happen to be fit into this book, I was absolutely amazed at how Martin absolutely nailed this book. It is probably, objectively speaking, maybe the best fantasy book I have ever read. I don't know that for sure. I recently finished it, so that might be a little bit of recency bias. But I can certainly not deny anybody who does say that. Prompt number 2 is best sequel you've read so far in 2023. This one I'm going to have to give, come on buddy, to Mad Ship, the second book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. I'm having such a blast reading through the Live Ship Traders trilogy. And as of recording this video, I'm about 200 pages into the Ship of Destiny, but Mad Ship was absolutely terrific. It did not suffer at all, in my opinion, from Book 2 syndrome. We get a bevy of characters that are fleshed out. The plot in this book gets furthered on in unpredictable but very, very interesting ways. And this second book also gave me a lot of really fun ideas to theorize about how the events of the Live Ship Traders are going to ultimately connect to the events that are happening in the plot in the Six Duchies, so from the Farseer trilogy, and I'm assuming beyond. So I've got a lot of ideas. I don't know if they're right yet. Some of them are, I think, starting to come to fruition in Ship of Destiny, but I'm really excited to see how this series closes out. And I've been having an absolute blast discussing these books with Ben. If you haven't seen our discussions on these books and you've read them because they are spoiler-filled, there's one on his channel so far, and there's one on mine, and we will be doing another one for Ship of Destiny at the end of the month. So go ahead and check those out if you're a fan of the Live Ship Traders trilogy. All right, prompt number 3 is going to be new release you haven't read yet but want to. And so this one is going to be The Prophet of Edan by Philip Chase. This is book 2 in his The Edan trilogy. So I read The Way of Edan. I loved this book. I thought it was a very interesting and fun mix of traditional fantasy trope and feel, but with a modern voice. I thought that this book was really well executed, very high quality for a self-published book, and I loved the story. So I'm very excited to get into The Prophet of Edan. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because on the back cover of The Prophet of Edan, there is a dragon. So allegedly book 2 doesn't waste a whole lot of time, doesn't mess around. We get right into it and we get dragons. So I cannot wait to see where Chase takes this series. Prompt number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Now for me, I'm going to have to go with Holly by Stephen King. So I just recently finished the very first book in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, Mr. Mercedes, and I've never read any content by Stephen King about Holly Gibney before this. So what I wanted to do was just kind of get caught up as much as I could before Holly came out. That way that I could enjoy that book whenever it releases later in September. Just based on the first book, Holly seems like a really interesting character. Now, I will say that knowing that there's other content about her and another whole entire book released about her coming up, I think it helps with the speculation. I will say, like, if I was reading this when it was published, I don't know how, like, I probably would have just thought that Holly was a really quirky, kind of interesting character, and not really sure if she was going to go anywhere. Maybe King felt the same way. Maybe, it was one of those characters that just was demanding more page time of him. I'm not really sure how it turned out that he ended up writing all of these, other stories with Holly in them. But needless to say, I wanted to get caught up on the Holly content that I've been missing out on, so I can read Holly when it comes out in September. Prompt number 5 is biggest disappointment. So, what are the odds that my biggest disappointment was also written by my most anticipated release author? The odds are probably pretty high when we're talking about Stephen King. So my most disappointing read of the year so far was Gwendy's Button Box. I really do not have a whole lot to say about this one. I think that I really struggled to get invested in the plot of the story, and I did not feel any kind of connection whatsoever to any of the characters, which makes it really tough to enjoy a reading experience. If this book wasn't as small as it was, I probably would have done the very rare for me DNF, but it was only a couple of hundred pages, so I figured I might as well power through it, and I do eventually want to read all of King's works, but this was just not for me. I know there are definitely fans of Gwendy's Button Box, but this one just did not work for me on almost every level, so this was pretty disappointing. Prompt number 6, new favorite author. Okay, so this one is pretty easy for me. It is definitely going to be Fonda Lee. So I just, about a week ago, finished Jade Legacy, which means I finished out the Green Bone Saga. And guys, I think the Green Bone Saga and Fonda Lee has firmly planted itself as of right now in my top 10 favorite series that I've ever read. I loved this series. What Fonda Lee did over the course of these 3 books was absolutely tremendous. The scope was huge, it was massive, but we still somehow were able to get these close, very intimate details and relationships with the characters in this book. So we really were able to get to know a lot of these characters that we follow over the course of time that the Greenbone Saga takes place in this world. It was very unique. It was extremely well executed. I'm so incredibly happy that I finally got around to reading this series. It's been on my TBR for the better part of a year and a half now. I don't know why I waited so long to pick this up. Maybe just to see, the hype die down a little bit, but in my opinion, guys, this series is worth the hype. I really hope that they make this into like a movie franchise. I worry about a TV show because I don't want them to add too much filler and get away from the story. But yeah, Greenbone Saga and Fonda Lee have definitely become a new favorite author for me. Prompt number 7 is going to be biggest surprise. Now, this one might be a little bit unexpected because I'm going to have to go with Watership Down by Richard Adams. Now, I don't mean unexpected in the sense that people aren't aware of this book and how wonderful it is. Many people have read this book. Most people read it when they're younger, but I somehow, it slipped through the cracks. I have never read this one either inside or outside of school until this year. This story about bunnies, little bunnies, had me on the edge of my seat, had me so invested in their little tribe of bunnies. I was anxiety ridden. I was like rooting for some of them, rooting against some of them. I never would have guessed this book would have provided the experience that it did for me. And I'm so glad I randomly decided to pick this up. This was not anywhere near my plans, my reading plans. But that's kind of why I like to leave my TBR pretty flexible and open, because then I throw stuff like this in and it ends up being the answer to my biggest surprise question for this tag, because, you know, I just felt like reading something that was completely different that I didn't plan on reading. And this ended up being such an awesome experience for me. So yeah, number 7 is going to be Watership Down by Richard Adams. Prompt number 8 is a book that made you happy. So this is another fairly easy answer because I read a lot of emotionally taxing books this year, and many were even on the darker, more grim side. But I did read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This book came exactly as advertised. It is unashamed in what it is. It just is what it is. And what it is a basically retired orc who has found a complete fascination with coffee, and she wants to move to a little town and open up a coffee shop and spread the love. That's more or less what this book is about. Now, there are certainly minor plot conflicts that come up to make the story interesting. But like I've said in my wrap-up, this was a very low-stakes book. It meant to be that way. And it was just really fun to follow this main character through her little trials and tribulations of opening up a coffee shop and hearing about some of her stories in the past from her adventures of being an orc. So yeah, this book made me really happy, and I'm really glad that I read it. Prompt number 9 is going to be newest fictional crush. So for this one, I'm going to have to go with Call Shaylinson, aka Call Shay from the Green Bone Saga. Guys, Shay is just a kick-butt, independent woman that handles business and doesn't take crap from anybody. I loved watching her growth from the time where she was a younger woman, and basically as she ages through the series, and to see like where she ends up within the clan, what she does outside of the clan, all types of stuff like that. I really loved following Shay, and she was not only my newest fictional crush, I guess, but she's one of my favorite characters that I've read so far this year. That leads us very nicely into prompt number 10, which is, who is your newest favorite character? 100%, without a doubt, in my mind, it is Captain Kenneth, aka the self-proclaimed king of the Pirate Isles from the Live Ship Traders trilogy. Kenneth is by far one of the most interesting characters that I have read in a really long time. It is just one of my favorite characters, maybe ever. I want to see how the series finishes out first before I make some bold, sweeping claims like that. He's just an absolute loose cannon, is completely unhinged sometimes, and being inside his head for his POV chapters is just one of the most unique experiences I have had with any character that I've read. He's just so incredibly interesting to me. I mean, his logic and his set of morals are his alone. I mean, it's just like wild. The things he thinks about and the things that he thinks other people think about him. Like, I don't know, I've just never read anything like him. I'm really interested to see where his character ends up at the end of the Live Ship Traders trilogy. So yeah, it's going to definitely have to be Captain Kenneth for this one. Prompt number 11 is a book that made you cry. So, come on, focus, buddy. Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I had tears in my eyes, both of happiness and sadness, during the course of this book. And it was just, I was so incredibly attached to some of the characters in this book. If you've read it, you know. If you haven't, I can't really talk about it due to spoilers. However, if you do want to hear my in-depth thoughts, I just recently released a review specifically for this book with non-spoiler section and a spoiler section. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. But yeah, this book had me tearing up multiple times. And I think that that's just really a sign of some tremendous character work and the ability to draw the reader in so much to, because I'm not somebody that cries often in books. I'm not a very emotional, outwardly emotional person. So if a book is able to do that, it really, to me, it just means that, you know, that author has a talent for writing some really compelling characters. Prompt number 12, most beautiful book you have bought or received this year. This is going to be a book that I received from the author, Von Roycroft, and that book would be The Severing Sun. Look at this book, guys. Look how beautiful this book is. Absolutely tremendous. This is book one in his The Sundered Nations trilogy. I have not read this yet. I have plans to read this one in September. And I do believe that he is releasing the second book, which the name of it is eluding me right now. But yeah, this book, I mean, it's such a cool, like, watercolor-y, like, design going on here. And as soon as I received this book, I was like, I gotta take a sweet picture of this because this book is really, really beautiful. So yeah, The Severing Sun by Vaughn Roycroft. Prompt number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I don't particularly like the way that this prompt is worded, just because I don't try to tell myself I need to read any books. I don't like to be putting pressure on myself to finish books by a certain date, because I read because I enjoy it. I don't want it to become a task. But all that being said, I understand the point of the question. So here are some books that I do definitely want to try to get to by the end of this year. So next month, we will be starting, me along with 4 other content creators, a Malazan Book of the Fallen read-along. We'll be starting with Gardens of the Moon in July. And so I would like to try to get maybe the first, if we do a book a month, which is our plan, the first 4 or 5 Malazan books done this year. I certainly want to continue with Realm of the Outerlings. After Live Ship Traders, I will be shifting to the Tawny Man trilogy with Ben, and hopefully we'll continue our discussions, because those have been a blast. And I do want to finish out A Song of Ice and Fire. If I didn't mention that, I've not read this series before. So I do want to finish A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, although I know that's the only part of the series I'll be able to finish because that's all that's written. So those are the books that I definitely want to try to get to, and I'll be obviously throwing in some other books throughout the course of the year as well. Lastly, I'm going to tag some people. So I'm going to tag, I've done no research. I don't know who's done this and who's not. I've just seen a couple people do it. So let's go with Madison Goodyear. We will go with Caleb from Calebrity and StoryTube. So you guys are tagged. Don't forget to tag me when you make this video so that I can watch your video and see what your answers are. Now it is time for Comedy with Colin. Today's joke, guys. Why do cows have hooves and not feet? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you're enjoying the content on the channel so far, please do consider subscribing because that helps me out a ton. I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading, and remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.